Hi, Emily.
Hi, how are you
Uh,
doing?
I'm doing very well. And yourself?
Good, thank you.
It's end of the week today. It's Friday. I hope you had a good
Yes,
week.
yes. Happy Friday. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Well, you are Friday morning. I'm Friday evening.
Friday morning over here. Yeah.
So one more day to go for you. I'm already done with the week.
Done with the week. Done with the week after this.
Yeah.
Yes.
You too. Okay. Perfect.
Perfect.
Good. So we're going to talk about the Peace Impact Calculator. I'm looking forward very much to that. So we had with Adrian, we discussed in the last episode the Peace Impact Framework, which is the how to call it, the foundation, let's say the
Yep.
logical foundation of the calculator, right?
Precisely. Precisely.
So we invite all the listeners to check this out as well, to see what's behind. And we talked a lot about the perceptions of peace and yeah, what on what ground actually it stands, the logical framework, and then based on that, obviously the calculator. Yeah, today we're going to talk about this impact calculator. Yeah, maybe share a little bit, maybe in summary first before we go more into detail. Yeah, how did it come? Was it there before the impact framework or after the impact framework? What's the origin of it?
Sure. I'm happy to get started with that. So, yeah, it came after the Peace Impact Framework. Peace Impact Framework was several years in the making, and the
Yeah,
calculator was probably a couple years in the making after the fact.
yeah,
But it's essentially a tool for applying the Peace Impact Framework. So, as you mentioned, the Peace Impact Framework provides a foundation of what peace is, how we can measure it. The idea with the calculator was to provide a really accessible and guided way for people to report on what they are finding by using the Peace Impact Framework. And so we're hoping to really simplify and standardize measuring and then communicating impact with the calculator.
okay. And it's based on project programs, I don't know, organizations.
Sure, it's based around projects. So generally speaking, it's for any given initiative that you have that you would like to report on, and any organization or any individual is really welcome to use it.
Hmm, okay. Good. Do you want to share it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll jump right into it. So, I think you will do me the favor of including this link in the show notes so people can
Absolutely.
access it themselves. But for
Absolutely.
anyone wondering, this is on Connexus. In the previous episode, Adrian spoke a little bit about it, but this is a publicly accessible platform for connecting those working in the social impact sectors, including Peacebuilding, of course. So when you go to our website, you will see our launch page for the Peace Impact Calculator. You can learn a little bit more in addition to what I'll be talking about today. And there's also, importantly, a user guide at the bottom. So
Mm,
we are also always open to have consultations or group presentations, but if you would like to do kind of more of a self-guided
mm.
approach, we have a PDF as well as a step-by-step walk. So please, at any point, feel free to use that for support in walking through.
And
But there
it's quite intuitive from what I saw so far. Yeah.
Yes, we do hope for it to be intuitive. Thank you for saying so. And we hope you won't need too much guidance, but just in case something isn't as intuitive as we're hoping,
Yeah.
feel free to use that guidance. And there are a few different ways to launch a new report, which you can find and discover. And we've, again, walked through those in the user guide, but this might be one of the most straightforward ways. I will say, as I said, Connexus is a publicly accessible platform. If you would like to build a report with the Peace Impact Calculator, you will need to make an account. Totally free, totally easy, just like creating an account on any other website. But we'd really like to have you as part of the Connexus community, so I think that will work well. So when you get to this page, once you hit launch the Peace Impact Calculator, you will be directed to this form. And as Pascal was helpfully noting, it should be pretty straightforward and intuitive, like filling out any other form or survey. The idea is that you are able to fill out the squares one by one, the boxes one by one, and it will generate a report with all of that information in a polished way that can be shared with donors or just with an external audience in general. So that is how we get started. I'm actually going to go to one that I have started before because it has all of our information in it, but I will walk through it and I'll try to be as descriptive as possible for anyone who's choosing to listen instead of watch. But at any point, also feel free to walk through with me if you are on your computer and on the video. We would love for you to be entering the data as you go. You're welcome to put in the title of your project draft, and then we can make sure that it's not published or on the site. So just a little plug. Feel free to play around with the calculator. You don't need to wait until you have a final report or final data. Last thing I'll say before I get started in terms of using this is that you can use it before you've started a project to prepare for it and to plan out the project. You can do it if you've already started the project.
It's also a planning tool, not only reporting, but also a planning tool.
Precisely. We do hope, because it walks you through and is guided by the Peace Impact Framework, that it can provide some frames of reference for how you want to track the indicators throughout the project and just give you that foundation of what kind of questions you'll be answering, essentially, and what you'll be reporting on. So hopefully, we hope it can be a planning tool. We also recognize it as a in-the-moment tracking tool. And then finally, even after you finish a project, you're more than welcome to go back in the calculator and report on the data after the fact. So just noting that at any point in the project cycle, you can start a Peace Impact Framework report or Peace Impact Calculator report. Forgive me.
There is a consent checkbox about data usage and so on. So how about data protection?
Precisely. So as we've mentioned with the framework, part of the idea is there's all of this disparate data, scattered data that we really want to bring together to find an analysis and speak clearly on what matters for peace and what impact we're making on peace, of course. That said, we want to be sure we're being responsible at data use. So we have this consent box. We want to be sure that if you want your data to be part of that aggregate, part of that global analysis, lovely, please check the box. If you don't, you have opted out and we will not be using your data for that purpose. Regardless, if we do use your data, it will be completely anonymized. But if you do not want your data included in our collection, that is perfectly acceptable. We do have a more detailed description of our data use and privacy policies for the site as a whole and the responsible data use principles that we use. But yeah, in general, please feel free to consent, and you can revoke this consent at any time as that works. So feel free to go back in and say, never mind, I don't want my data to be used for this analysis. And always feel free to reach out to us as well. Thank you for pointing that out. So I can jump in from there if that works for you.
Perfect, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So this starts with just the fundamental information about your project, what the title of your project is, the description of it. You can be as detailed as you would like in this. It's really a free write form. And then for those who might be unfamiliar with Connexus, it is essentially structured around 20 or so thematic action areas or different areas of the social impact sectors that we have seen as a platform. And so if you would like for your report to show up under any of those themes, then you can select them in this part of the form. Also, on the consent side of things, if you would prefer to keep your data private for in general, then there will be an option for that as well. So you are not required to publicize this at any point. It's more so for your use. And then if you'd like to share it with our community, we of course welcome that. If you'd like to add a customization with an image for your report, we have a space for that. And then, as I mentioned, we have the project start and end date, whether that has already come and gone or it's going to be in the future. Feel free to enter it. If you are doing this while you still have an ongoing project or while you're about to start a project, we do offer email reminders. So you can say that you want email reminders and approximately how often you will be reporting, monthly, quarterly, biannually, annually, and we will send you an email at that time frame to say it's time to enter your report and enter your update to into your calculator. So just a note there that you're able to do so. After that, should be pretty straightforward to hit next. With our form, when you hit next, the previous step is automatically saved. If at any point you're in the middle of a stage and you would like to leave and come back, there's always a save and exit at the bottom of the screen. So please feel free to jump in, leave, come back. That is always an option. So this is still a bit some more basic information. We have some more, give us background on the organization that you're working with, on the objectives of the project and things of that nature. We do have organizational profiles on Connexus, with the idea being that you're able to consolidate the work that you're doing or to showcase the work that you're doing in one place. So if you would like to take advantage of that, you can create an organizational profile on Connexus and enter it here, but that is not required. If you have a logo, I'd love to see it. So we have a few different spaces for, you can say where your project is active, whether that's a regional level, you know, a national level, in between. Please feel free to be it's a free write field, intentionally realizing projects happen at all different kinds of scales. And for where your project is primarily based, we have a collaboration map on Connexus. Similarly, with the idea of both sharing and connecting to other people's work. And so if you would like your project to show up on that map, then it helps for us to have at least a pin, the geotagged pin. So that's why we ask for a primary location here. And as I mentioned before, you can choose whether you want your project to show up on that map or in our project directory in general. Our website, email, again, the basic information. So getting back into the project information itself, the program that you might be working on, this is the next phase is to share the objectives of your project. We have 1 to 3 at the moment. We're hoping to add some more customization if you happen to have more than 3 objectives, but in general, to make the form as accessible as possible, we kept it to 3 objectives. Any questions so far, Pascal? Let me take a pause.
No. It's I was just thinking about the 3 objectives.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's good to maybe have the opportunity to tailor-made, as you mentioned it. But also, actually, the more you have, the more things get complicated. It's also a good thing to be concise and to break it down to one.
That is the exact balance we're trying to strike, of being comprehensive, but still trying to make it straightforward and easy to digest at the end of the day. So great point there. So our next phase is where you can select which of the Peace Impact Framework pillars or approaches you want to include in your report. None of them are required. All of them are available. As Adrian, I think, spoke to, our lived experience is defining what peace means with the community that you're working with. Our aligned measures are the 10 standard indicators that we all agreed that we formulated across the 5 themes that Adrian mentioned: polarization, agency, legitimacy, violence, and I knew I would forget one of them, but I will get there and it will be fun. In any case, that's where aligned measures come in. And then expert observations is where you can provide some of the reflections on the outcomes of your project.
And then concretely, what happens if I check these boxes?
Absolutely. So if you check all of them, then you will be guided through the form step by step. If you choose to uncheck a box, then you will skip over that step in the form. That's essentially the difference of it. Also, apologies, something I forgot to mention is throughout the framework, you will see tooltips, these little eyes in circles. At any point, you can hover over them and we try to provide more information about what we mean. For instance, here we have our Peace Impact Framework landing page where you can find more about the themes and the pillars that we discuss here, so you can reference that. But throughout, hopefully speaking, as we said, it's intuitive. If not, we tried to provide some tooltips along the way. So yes, this is how you determine how the rest of the form will play out for you. In this case, I'm keeping all 3 themes so I can walk you through each of them. But in general, it is up to you. So this is perfect. So across each of the 3 pillars, you can choose which of the Peace Impact Framework themes apply. So as I was saying, the 5, which the one that I missed was investments or legitimacy, I think. In any case, we have these to choose from. You can say which ones are applicable to what you're measuring with the community. For lived experiences, this portion of it. This is, yeah, go ahead.
And then how many people, you say how many people actually, yeah. contributed to it.
Exactly. So this is noting we have in mind part of it was inspired by or built around our grounded accountability model, which we have another link for in Connexus if you would like to learn more. But it's a method that an approach and method we've found that works well for gathering that data with the community in terms of what they would define peace or another theme as. And with that, we usually can specify how many people were consulted in defining what peace means to them. So if you were to use this part of the theme of the form, this is another chance where you can, as I mentioned, there are these tooltips and you can directly access the information about the grounded accountability model from here. The idea is if you've defined with them what peace means, then you can add these indicators here. I will go a little bit more into detail about how the indicators work in just a moment. But for now, suffice it to say, this is the area for people to enter information about what peace means to the community that you're working with. Once you've filled that out to the best of your ability, you can click next. We also tried to make most of these boxes optional, or most of the pieces optional. So if it's something where you know the information for one piece, but you haven't figured out the next thing, you should be able to keep moving through the form and come back to it later. So don't feel the need to fill out every box before going to the next one. So the next form is aligned measures. As I mentioned, these are the 10 indicators that Adrian talked about, the standard indicators defined through the consultations that we had in developing the framework itself. So you can check off if any of these are applicable to your project. I think this is one area where we were mentioning the planning aspect. Perhaps you haven't started your project yet, but are curious about what indicators you might collect. This is a way to look at the aligned measures and see if any of these are ones that you would want to collect data on. So for this project, for this example project, there were indicators around institutional legitimacy. So we've checked those off. And then it's a matter of proceeding for the ones that you
just before you go ahead, if you go up to what is the violence, like for instance, if you check a percentage of the population that feels safe walking alone around the area they live, or the second one, conflict-related death per 100,000 population. So, and then later on, I will be asked to enter the data, the percentage or the number of deaths. Is that the case?
Exactly.
And then will it be compared to some references or what?
Great question. So within the report itself, you will only be comparing to your own data, but as we're collecting this data in the aggregate, that's where we'll be making the comparisons across contexts and across projects.
So that's actually where it's important. On the very first screen, we saw that checkbox, but it's actually good if people agree on
precisely. Having your consent would be lovely. It will be anonymized, so it's more for the aggregate data. But yes, that's where the comparison comes into play.
Okay. Well, great.
Thank you for that question. And yes, you will be entering this later. So it's a two-step process with this calculator. You build out the framework and identify all of the indicators that you'll be measuring, all of the things you will be tracking. And then after you've created the basic framework, you then go in and make an entry with all of that data where you enter in what your statistics are for those relative ones. So after you've selected your aligned measures, which it's possible you don't have any in your project, and that's perfectly fine. We have the option for context-specific indicators. So we know between donor requirements and maybe your organizational requirements that there are just indicators you have that will not fall under the 10 aligned measures. This is the space to enter them, and you can have them fall under one of our 5 peace impact themes, or maybe it's other and it's not related to that.
And then the value type is percentage, dollar, euro, or something else. Well, how does this relate? So if I say, I don't know, $100,000, what does it mean?
So the idea is, for instance, if you were to speak about investments and say $1,000 were invest, and you choose dollar as your value type, you can say how much was invested in a community program. Alternatively, you can have percent of community members who felt safe walking at night. That's one common indicator we found through the grounded accountability model. So that's your opportunity to really customize what you're tracking and the way that you're tracking it. You can also leave it blank, and then in that case, it can be just an absolute number. So say you don't put a value type and you just want to say the total number of people who did something, then you have that option as well. This is something I would say is helpful with the guide, that the walkthrough shows you an example of how it then appears in the report for reference. So hopefully that's helpful, and you can also kind of play around with it and see what works best for you. But yeah, essentially for the project we're working with, they had their own indicators they were tracking for MEL, or for the monitoring and evaluation, and they're able to enter as many or as few as they want. You can remove and add as you go. You can see it's a pretty long list. There's no limit on how many indicators you can add. Feel free to do it at your leisure, to your preference, I should say. And yeah, so the value types and then the indicators that you'll be working with. That is essentially what the custom indicator part is. Any other remaining questions for this section?
No, that's fine. It's very obvious.
Okay, good. We love to hear that. The more obvious, the better. So this is the end of building out the framework. Like I mentioned, this is just establishing the template for what you will be entering data for. And once you get to this point, this is the personalization screen. So you're able to choose if you want to include your brand's colors, your organization's colors, and it can be a little more customized in that way. You can choose of all of the data that you entered, how much you actually want to appear in the final report. Once you have done all of that, you can click Save Framework. It will be in your dashboard, which is walked through a little bit more in the user guide, but through Connexus, we have a dashboard, and that will be where you can access any of the projects and frameworks that you've started. So in the interest of this demo, I have pulled up what is created after you save your framework. So it creates its own resource page where the description of your project shows up, the picture you uploaded is available, your logo, everything of those sorts, of that sort. Yes, and then you'll see View Framework. As I mentioned, there's the framework itself, or the initial report itself, and then after you've entered data, that's a separate document. So speaking to the framework part as a preview, this is the digital version that I mentioned, that it automatically generates this digital version. Again, with everything you've entered, it creates this final product where you can list all of the the data that the information that you shared. So you see all of the long list of custom indicators. They're all available here and all grouped by theme as well. So the framework itself, it's giving people an idea of what will this project cover? What are we looking at? What are the goals of the project? And there's also for both this and the other one, there's the digital version. There's also a PDF version. So on the right-hand side, it says print report. If you click that, you can save it as a PDF, and it's something that you can share with donors or with an external audience. So that's the starting point for the framework itself. The next part is entering that data, as I mentioned. So I'll actually end up walking through the dashboard to show you how you can access it. In the upper right of your screen, when you're navigating Connexus, you can go to your dashboard. This is also where, as you upload resources and events about Connexus, make a small plug, you're welcome to do that as well. But as you have your projects and Peace Impact Framework reports, toward the bottom is where you will see all of the entries and frameworks that you've created. So once you've done that, you can add an entry to your project. And because I've already started one, I'll keep it easy to do that. But at the moment, let me...
So an entry means a new reporting period or a new data, or both?
Thank you for clarifying. It means new data. So yeah, it's a new report. So sometimes if you just have one period of reporting, then you'll just have the one report. But to say you're reporting quarterly and you want to compare the indicators over time, then that's an opportunity. Or a baseline to end line, whatever it may be, creating a new report will be the opportunity to compare those pieces of data. So it takes you right into it. This is all based on what you entered in your framework. So you'll see all of the custom indicators in the first screen that you specified. Now you can enter all of the data that you have for what the numbers are, what the percent may be on all of the indicators. That should be pretty straightforward as well. Hopefully you've defined what your values are. If you find that once it comes to this phase, that's not quite how you wanted to report on it, you can always go back to the framework and that will adjust accordingly in the reporting. This expert observations is the section that is not in the building the framework part because it's reflecting on your project and the outcomes of it. So that includes things along with such as expected and unexpected outcomes, the positive and negative ones, lessons learned, challenges or context changes that were relevant to your project. Any of those elements that you'd like to report on for, we still also is a really valuable way to share our data and reflect on what works in projects and what works in Peace and what doesn't work in Peace. So we find this to be equally helpful should you opt into including this in your report. As I mentioned, promising practices recommendations, we really welcome you to fill out this part of the form to the best of your ability. And we have a final one of what are the key statistics you'd like included in your report. So say it's generally the demographic data that you included in your report of your project that you'd like to include. This is a space to do that. Yeah, any basic questions on expert observations? Sure.
No, that's fine. It's I'm looking for how it looks, how it compares and so on. So it's already now. It looks there's a lot of information. Actually, it will be interesting then at the end to see how this is presented.
Yes, perfect. So we'll jump right into that. This is just the reporting. Let me click next and make sure we're on the right page. As before, you can personalize it, suggest and click which of the ones you want to show up in your final report. And then you save the entry and it will be ready for you.
That's now one data entry, huh?
One data entry, precisely. And then you are invited to add as many as you would like after that.
Okay, and then how does this connect? If you say, is there a date for the data entry? If you say this is the data entry for, I don't know, that day or that month or something. And then actually the question I'm coming to is to say, can I have these data entries and then extract the data entries based on the reporting period? If I say, okay, I want 2 years, 1 year, 2 months, and then it takes all the data that have been entered for that during that period, I guess. Is that how it?
That's a really great question. At this point, that is not a functionality that we have through the calculator, but that's a great plug for me to say that this is very much in its nascent stages, and we're always looking to upgrade it. There's going to be a Peace Impact Calculator 2.0, and hopefully, 3.0 and all the iterations after that. So any suggestions you have along the way of this is what I would like to be able to do with this that I can't do right now, please send them our way. And we really want to keep those in mind to make sure that this is as useful as possible. But that's a great point and idea as is. Great point. So yes, apologies that that's not a functionality we have at the moment, but it's something hopefully in the future we'll be able to provide to everyone. So after you've saved it, you'll have the option to see the report, to edit the report, go home, go to your dashboard. The same way as I was mentioning, it will then appear on the resource page right under the framework, and you can have as many reports as you want. When you click the report, the data entry report, that's where the fun happens, the magic happens of the data that you've entered shows up next to the indicators. So before with the framework, it just said, this is what we're measuring, the percent of respondents who change their behavior and attitude. Now we can say 66% of the respondents change their attitude or behavior. If you add another report for a different date that is after the fact, it will create 2 columns in this indicator. So you'll see on the left, 60%, 66% on August 30th had this. And then on a later date, this is how that indicator changed over time. So you will be able to see the side-by-side comparison for that, just not necessarily the extraction beyond of the full extraction as you were asking about, Pascal. Like if you were to have more than 2 reports, for instance, that would be a bit more difficult at this time. Here's the expert observations. Here's how they all show up in the final product. They're all listed in the columns that you shared them in, the outcomes, the changes in context, promising practices, lessons learned. We tried to make it pretty organized at the bottom. And just as before, there's also a printable option. So I will scroll down to see what's new. You can see the indicators and the data there, and the expert observations are listed at the bottom of the PDF as well.
Is it possible to work on the report for several people, several users working on the same report?
Another great question. At this time, no, because it is tied to a Connexus users account, but we can explore that option. So multiple people could be working on a report. Yeah. I'm noting these down in my head. So thank you for that suggestion as well.
If I don't know if it's useful, that just came to my mind. If somebody's more working on the community inputs, another one more on the experts.
Absolutely. We would love for it to be a collaborative tool. So I think that's something in the future we hope to build out. Yeah. So anything while I'm still sharing my screen that would be helpful to review, or any remaining questions from the walkthrough?
No, so the impact is there, or maybe, so from here, if you want to show the impact, you show it through the evolution, for instance, that you explained. You have 2 columns or 3 columns. That's how you show the impact. It's the evolution over time.
Exactly. And yeah, go ahead.
And then you might maybe, you might maybe argue in a more text way, what the impact is on peace in that area, in this region, or wherever it is. Okay.
Yeah, precisely.
Passionate.
Perfect.
Wow. Okay. Good. So many years of development inside, as you said, first for the framework and then for the calculator.
Yes.
And maybe let's talk a little bit more about the aggregation. So this should actually allow you, for a specific area in a specific country, to show, how the evolution is. So it can also be used as a, how do you call this? A prevention tool, theoretically at least, or, signaling tool to say, okay, we have, I don't know, 5 reports in the same area and all's getting worse. All the indicators are getting down.
Absolutely. That would be a really lovely use for us to have, and aggregating it and for signaling and prevention entirely. We hope the more we build out the database, the more that we can use it for purposes, again, along the project cycle, both for signaling and then for assessing later. So absolutely.
But it needs a lot of data then, I guess.
It does require a lot of data. So that's going to be my plug as well. Please enter it so that this does become the tool that we're envisioning it to be, and so that it's helpful. It's not helpful without other people's data being entered into it, with your consent again. But the more we can work from, the more we can really play out the, making sure that we're making the most of all of the data that's being collected.
Yeah, I think it's very important that everybody checks the box for aggregating. That makes more, you can still have it confidential or anonymous.
Exactly.
You can have use another name or whatever you want, but
Precisely.
Yeah, great tool. Anything you have in mind about new technologies, AI or something? That's a bit a mandatory question to ask with the times we live in.
Absolutely. AI is at the top of our mind. We're, in our dream, hoping that, as for instance, something like immediate feedback as you're entering the indicator or custom indicator, that there could be immediate feedback of, here's how you could adjust that indicator to be a little more specific or to be a little more general, providing feedback on those aspects, and also providing more of an analysis. As we saw from this initial iteration, it's more so entering the data and having it displayed. We hope in the future it can involve a little more active analysis and actually kind of the calculator part of it, of here's what the implications are for this data. And then also, as we collect more data, a live feed of, okay, this is the indicator that you're measuring. Here's how this data has compared to other people while you're filling out the form. So we have a lot of ideas and hopes for it, for AI. And I think that other part of that is that we really want to be sure we're bridging the digital divide to the extent that we can. This is, for better or for worse, an exclusively online tool. So it's something you do need an internet connection for. Though you can use it on mobile or desktop at the very least. But we are hoping to see how we can make this something that is accessible and inclusive as possible, I suppose.
No. You could think about, I'm testing this in a totally other context, but you could, for instance, have experts reports and just upload it, and the AI extracts the data and adds it to the database rather than typing it.
Yeah.
Then you're never 100% sure, but even if you type manually, you're maybe not 100% sure if you can still do mistakes.
Exactly, precisely. The more we can automate it to make people's lives easier, that would be lovely. And then, obviously give them the option to edit and go back.
Or to generate introductions and conclusions or something
Also very brilliant. Yes. We'll have you on the developer team for when we're doing the next part for sure.
For 2.0, yeah.
Yes.
Great. Well, how are people using it? How was the feedback?
Yeah, we have gone through a couple iterations of testing similar to the framework as far as developing this through consultations. But once we developed the basic features, we had an alpha testing phase and a beta testing phase to get a sense of what was useful and what wasn't useful. I recently presented to a group of young peace builders who we feel like this calculators might be particularly useful for organizations who do not have in-house either monitoring or evaluation and or communications capabilities, right? Like we can all learn Canva and create a report, but it would be easier if we can put in the data and it creates the report for us. So a combination of providing that MEL guidance and the design assistance, we're hoping that that's useful for organizations of that nature, and young peace builders was one audience be useful for. That said, we're constantly looking to grow. The idea is that it could be used in any context and at any level of project. So we would love to meet with anyone who's interested in could see the potential of applying to their project, and definitely walk through it.
Yeah. So to be in touch, there is what is it? Info at, or what is the email, or is there a phone number? I can put it in the show notes.
Perfect. Yep, you got the email info@cnxus.org. We have a chat bot on our website as well, but please feel free to contact us through our contact form. We have a million different ways to reach us, and we are always responsive and happy to be in touch.
And it's free to use as far as I see. So there are
no
hidden costs.
No hidden fees.
To remove the watermark, please pay $50 now.
Yes, it's completely free. Yeah.
Great. So a great service to the community, to the world, actually.
So. We hope so.
Good. Well, impressive. Thank you very much. Looking forward to sharing this and see what the feedbacks are. So please don't hesitate to comment, and you might also have a look at the comments if there are some, or I send it to you.
Yeah.
And or they write directly to you, even better. And yeah, hopefully that more and more people use it.
Hopefully. Thank you so much for your time to walk through this a bit. And yes, please be in touch with feedback and everything of the sort. Really looking forward to hearing from you all.
It was a great pleasure. Bye-bye. Thanks, Emily.